Today we are talking about how to write lyrics that don't suck. Hello, my name is Kobe McCool. I've written quite a few songs over the last few years and I've learned a few things about how to write better lyrics. I've written for myself and I've written for other people and I'm always learning new things. I want to share 10 of the best tips that I've learned and hopefully it will help you upgrade your songwriting skills. Speaking of 10, we're almost at 10,000 subscribers. As I'm filming this video, we are so close to being there. If you're watching in the future, maybe we've already reached that goal, which is awesome. It's so cool to have all of you here. When we reach 10K, I'm going to do a giveaway. So make sure you click like and subscribe, turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss that. Right, let's dive in. Tip number 1, if you want to write lyrics that don't suck, is to write lyrics that do suck. To begin with, just write. Purely by doing it and iterating over and over again, you are going to get better. The more you play with language, the better you will get. The more you play with melodies, the better you will get. Make the mistakes and then learn from them. Learn how to swap a mediocre word for a better one, how to say what you want to say with less words and more creatively. Study your favorite songs. Understand what it is about them that you love so much. Why do they work? A quote that comes to mind: a good design is not when there is nothing left to add, but when there is nothing left to remove. And another quote: if I had more time, I'd have written a shorter letter. Write more songs. Always aim for quality, but focus on quantity. Moving on to tip number 2. What is your story? Writing ideas down on a completely blank page with no vision, with no context is really difficult. Counterintuitively, by giving yourself some limitations, it can actually give you more creative freedom because it sets you up with some momentum. Narrow down your feelings and the story you want to tell. Knowing what you want the lyrics to make you feel and what it's about can be really helpful for creating structure, ideas, words, phrases. You can decide whether it's a literal story and you're going to use descriptive words, or whether it's a broader, more ephemeral song where you're singing more about a feeling or an experience. And that brings me on to tip number 3, which is: what is your style and rhyme scheme? I don't know all of the technical terms in the poetry world, like stanza, I was gonna say manza. Stanzas, refrains, line breaks, iambic pentameter, stuff like that. I have a vague idea of what they are, but I don't have that in the forefront of my mind when I'm creating. You don't have to memorize all the different types of poems, but it's worth having a look into a few of them because you might end up using some of them in your songs. For example, here, I'd forgotten that this is what it's called, but a limerick. There was an old man with a beard who said, "It is just as I feared. 2 owls and a hen, 4 larks and a wren have all built their nests in my beard." It's cool playing around with those ideas, just getting to know those different techniques, but you don't have to look into poetry for that. You can listen to other people's music and see what techniques did other people use. Oh, they only used 2 or 3 words there, or they refined the chorus down and it's actually really simple, or they literally used 1 word. All of that will help create some structure for you to work with. Now on to tip number 4. This one's a really interesting one. Calibrate your critical filter. This sounds way more complicated than it actually is. When you're coming up with any ideas, there's a filter of quality that everybody has that will let good ideas through and reject not so good ideas. This can become a problem though if your filter is too strong when you're coming up with an initial idea. A sensitive idea that could turn into something really good and blossom will get rejected because it hasn't fully developed yet. So for me, when I'm first coming up with ideas, I like to almost completely release the filter and just put any random ideas down, so long as they have some sort of connection to the original idea. But it doesn't even have to be words. It could just be a melody or something that feels nice to say. It could just be a word that I like, even though I can't figure out yet how to tie it into the topic. Once you've got all of your ideas, weak and strong, then you can turn up the filter and get rid of the weaker ideas and keep the strong ones. Alternatively, you could have a filter that's too weak all the time so that your finished lyrics are actually quite cheap and cheesy. So it's a skill, knowing when to be critical and how critical to be. Once you've got that calibrated, we can move on to tip number 5, which is brainstorm. There's a few different tools that I always find myself using when brainstorming. The first one is a visual cue. So I will go onto a website like Pinterest, I'll type in a few keywords from the topic, and then just find some artworks that I think are really cool that can inspire some other lyrics. I often like to use poems as well. You can type that same keyword into Google. Let's say it's about loneliness and you type in loneliness poem, and there'll be some poems that come up about that, and you can just not steal, but take significant inspiration from whatever they've written, or phrasing, or even just words that really work well in that context. When it comes to rhyming, I always use a rhyming website. I will just take a keyword, let's say that it's sad, and I'll type in sad rhyme, and it will just show me a selection of different words that are either perfect rhymes or slant rhymes, something that sounds similar phonetically but it isn't a perfect rhyme. That can be incredibly useful because sometimes I just get stuck with something and I'm like, I cannot think of a word that fits in this rhyme structure but also makes sense for the actual topic of the song. When I'm brainstorming, that is when my critical filter is at its weakest, so I just put down any ideas that come to me, and when I start putting things together, instead of deleting any of the ideas that are weaker or that I've decided I'm not going to use yet, I just push them down to the bottom so that I can come back to them if ever I need to. You might come to the bridge of the song and go, oh, this word here that I wanted to use somewhere but I just didn't know where, now I can incorporate it. So don't delete anything, just move it out of the way. Tip number 6 is to create a song structure as a guide. This is the song structure that I pretty much always use, and it's a very popular song structure for good reason, because it just works, which is a 4-bar intro, a 16-bar verse, a 4-bar pre and an 8-bar chorus, and then it more or less repeats: 8-bar verse, 4-bar pre, 8-bar chorus, 8-bar bridge, and then repeat the 8-bar chorus once more at the end. Another quote that comes to mind is, learn the rules like a pro so that you can break them like an artist. Because of course you don't have to follow this structure, the rules are there are no rules, but it just works and it can simplify the process so that you don't have to think of too many things all at once. And it looks more complex than it actually is. When you break it down, all you really need is a verse, a bridge, and a chorus. Everything else is more or less repetition, but that's when the rhyming websites can come in handy, because if you already have a verse, you just have to copy and paste that into the next one, but you just have to switch a few words around and say something slightly different. Now we move on to tip number 7, and that is to have melodies written first already. Most often I will have an instrumental that I've been creating, some sort of chord structure, and I will just put gibberish down in FL Studio. I'll just record whatever ideas feel nice to sing. The most recent song I just released, called Nightmare, for example, I'd have the chord structure and then just come up with random ideas that feel nice to sing, like da 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 da. It's got this sort of swelling, moving feeling because that's what the instrumental sounds like. Da 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 da. Da, 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 da. There's some repetition there. I find some sort of nice melody. Da da da. It's just. I can use similarity, repetition in the melody, repeat the first half of a phrase and make the second half different. Things like that, just exploring melody ideas before I've even come up with any words. Then I just try and make words fit to those melodies. That way I can pay close attention to how the song feels at a certain moment. So during those verses, da 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 da, there's a lot going on there. It's slightly busier. Whereas the pre-choruses, I slow everything down. Da 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 da. It's like the calm before the storm. And then the main chorus comes in and it all goes crazy. If you start getting stuck, tip number 8 is really helpful, and that is to take the next easiest step. Wherever you are in the song, it's good to know all of these different options that you have, so that if you get stuck in a certain section, you don't have to sit and stew over it for hours going, I can't think of a good chorus. Just come up with a chorus melody and then leave it at that. Or move on to the bridge if you haven't tried putting some ideas in there. Or just copy the verse that you've got and make verse 2, or come up with some other ideas. And then you can come back to the little bit that you've been stuck on. Whilst you're working on other ideas, your subconscious will likely be working away at some decent idea for the chorus. If it's not flowing somewhere, try something else. Sometimes there's a time and a place for trying to fight through a creative slump. Most often, the reason you get stuck trying to put an idea down is because your filter is too strong. I struggle with this all the time. I'm like, oh, I can't think of something. It's not that I can't think of something, it's that I can't think of something that meets the standard that I think that it should. Better to just put something down and then take a break from it, come back and listen to it again. You'd be surprised the number of times you actually are making something good, you're just being too critical. When you really can't think of anything else, tip number 9 is a really helpful one too, and that is to use cheat codes or cheeky techniques. They're technically not cheat codes, they're just songwriting techniques, but they kind of are cheat codes. And what do I mean by that? It's just using na-na-nas, la-la-las, other melody lines, or repetition. These techniques are used all the time in pop music because it really works. I mean, sometimes they're done to death and it's over the top. Around the world, around the world, around the world, around the world. I don't know how many times it says around the world in that song, but it's a lot. But it shows you as an example that you can do a lot with very little. If you've got some good lyrics, there's nothing wrong with just saying the same phrase again. It can emphasize, it can create more impact about that specific phrase. Like in Nightmare, just before the drop, I say the word wildest dream, and then I just say my wildest dream. I just say it twice because it emphasizes the significance of the experience being like my wildest dream. That phrase is really important, so repeating it just felt right. There's lots of songs that I love that just have a random na 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 in it, in the middle of a verse. Jon Bellion does this all the time, and it's great. So for example, in the song Human, he goes, if my location's never unknown, I can follow it to get home, like just adds a random anae because why not? Tell me why I still feel lost, tell me why I still feel. There's another example of repetition. Tell me why I still feel lost, tell me why I still feel. Like, just adds the emphasis to that phrase. It's great. It's a cheat code, but it's also not. Something else Jon Bellion and all of the other amazing artists do all of the time is tip number 10, which is to sing with conviction and character. You would be amazed at how good terrible lyrics can sound if they're sung and performed well. I've heard quite a few radio shows have tried doing this with artists. They've got an artist in and they ask them to try and sing a song with stupid lyrics and try and make it sound good, and they do. It still sounds cool. Obviously they're singing about something silly, but they're singing it so well with such good expression. Obviously you still want to try and write good lyrics, but it's easy to think that lyrics are worse than they are when you see them written down. I remember hearing Ian Kirkpatrick saying that he'd gotten a demo for a song that had been written for Dua Lipa. I think it was either for New Rules or Don't Start Now. Ian had listened to the demo vocals and just wasn't sure about the song, and then he got the final vocals back from Dua Lipa and was like, whoa, this is an amazing song, I love this. But it was all because of how well Dua performed the vocal. Hopefully if you use those techniques, you'll be able to write some lyrics that don't suck. I wish you the best of luck in that process as well. If you have any other suggestions for things that you found have helped you, comment them down below. I will link the song Nightmare that I mentioned in this video along with my other music if you want to go and listen. I'm really excited for 10k. It's so cool to have all of you here, and if you're new here, click like and subscribe so you don't miss all the future content to come. I look forward to sharing the next video with you, but until then, believe in yourself and you will be unstoppable. Bye.